Mark's bringing you a share.
Oh, yeah.
Mark's hired.
There we go. Oh, great. Good to see you.
Go down.
I was in copy it all, that was my first name.
So live?
I think you're live.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Welcome to the, what is the date? September 5th. Council work session. We got two topics tonight. Our initial conversations on the urban growth boundary expansion. As most of you know, it's that time again with Metro. So we have some decisions we have to make before December 1st. So we want to talk about what that process is going to look like. And our second topic tonight is we have all of our chairs from our boards and commissions coming in to talk about how we coordinate and work with each other with this new year. And we're going to be going over all of our council goals and objectives. So with that, we will start with UGB expansion. So Eric, I think you're taking.
Yeah,
on that,
turn it
right?
right over to Erica.
Great. Well, Mayor, that was an excellent explanation of tonight's topic. So with that, I'm just going to jump right into the presentation here. So the purpose of the discussion tonight is to, review the timeframe and application requirements for an urban growth boundary proposal to Metro. We're going to ask for council direction on a couple of issues. We'll look at what is needed for the letter of interest, and then we want to know if council needs any more additional information from the planning department or, staff to make an informed decision on what to submit for in our LOI. And then we also want to have a review and provide kind of a high level discussion on annexations and annexation agreements. And just to let you know, we have scheduled a meeting about the urban growth boundary expansion proposal and the LOI and this process for the next the first meeting of each month from here on out till November. So there's going to be other topics we're going to be getting to, such as the annexation agreement. So tonight, this is kind of the high level. The next meeting, we'll do a kind of a deeper dive into that topic.
Can I add to that real quick?
Yes.
And that was excellent. Thank you. And one of the things we really need to think about tonight is the letters due on December 1st. I know you're going to cover this in detail, but for us, we probably have to make a final decision at first meeting in November. So the staff can prepare that letter. So as a council, what do we need? What information do we need? What do we have to have in place? What do we have to have planned to be in place? What do we need to understand before we make that final decision? So staff has plenty of time to work on that and get that information to us.
Yep.
A lot of it we already have. We've been working on the Sherwood West concept plan, but still some details to figure out.
And just to be clear, if we do submit a letter by December 1st, does not bind us to doing an ask. It says we're interested in doing an ask. We may or may not do the ask come spring.
That is correct.
Yeah.
It's just a letter of interest. Exactly.
Our letter before.
Yeah, I just.
Yes.
Yes, that's a good point. The final decision doesn't have to be then, but I think it's a good indication of where we're going. Yeah, so.
I think it's advisable if we're gonna do the letter, we should all be on that path. Yes, unless something drastic comes up. Thank you for letting me interrupt.
Yeah, no problem. So I know we've all seen this image 1,000 times, but I always like to start off with it. We are at the very first phase of this long initiated process for the Sherwood West concept plan and, any build out of the area. The long process.
Can we move that?
Mhm.
Can we move that arrow just a smidge this way? It feels like we've done a lot of work to be so left.
We're getting there. We're
Okay.
we're getting there.
I do just want to highlight though, the exact next step. So technically we're in the green, the third one there. And depending on, if you guys give us the nod for all of Sherwood West or a portion of it, we'll make the ask to Metro. They'll give us their decision by end of 2024. Winter 2024 is when they make a decision. So we would be at the end of the green there, and then early 2025 would move into the red, which is comprehensive planning and all the really detailed work, including any annexation code, et cetera. So early 2025, we start that. And based on this timeline, about a minimum of a year and a half until we finish that comprehensive planning and zoning and environmental analysis, all that detailed work that goes into the comp plan. And so it'd be mid 2026 likely before we saw any type of actual annexation. So just to be clear, we're talking 2026 here, and we still have quite a bit of work to go.
So again, why are we considering a UGB expansion proposal? Well, from our H&A and our economic opportunities analysis, we have deficits for both. H&A.
What's the H&A?
Housing needs analysis, thank you. We have deficit for both employment and housing land. We hear a lot, we need to keep Sherwood, and then Sherwood is facing pressure, as housing prices are going up. There's pressure to, rezone properties here in Sherwood for, higher density uses. Which leads to more infill development. So Sherwood West kind of releases that, pressure valve, and we can plan for that potential release.
Potential, don't assume.
But
Nothing's
we
factual.
can, definitely plan for that area to remain consistent with the current character of Sherwood that we have now.
Can I ask a question?
Mhm.
So the last housing needs and analysis was 2017, correct?
2019,
That was
and we were deficit. I'll get to that here in just a second.
Thank you.
Yep. Also, more employment land will help diversify Sherwood's tax base. And we just know that, planned communities overall tend to grow better. So timeframe and requirements for the letter of interest. It's due by December 1st, as the mayor said, and we need to include an area of interest that, we are thinking about bringing in or, wanting to make a proposal for. So that we would need to, look at acreages for both employment and land, and then we need to create those metrics for how much we're asking for. And then the full proposal is due to Metro by April 5th of next year. And I've listed here kind of all the requirements that are needed for that full proposal and the documents that we have completed to date.
Now, if we decide, hey, we're not on the same page and we did not want to do a letter of interest, then is there also a chance that Metro could say, well, we want that in? And could they do it without us sending the letter?
My understanding is they could, it is highly unlikely.
It's,
that
yeah.
They would do that, yeah.
Okay. So it has to be at the city's request. It can't just be, hey, we need to grow and we see an area there, so it has to.
I think we would be at more risk if that reserve land was like between two cities and they were competing for it. But
Okay.
with the location of this, I think that's highly unlikely.
Okay.
Yeah. That's my opinion. What do you guys think is staff?
Paul, that was a good question. I actually don't know the answer to that question. Off the
Okay.
top, we can look into it.
My
I think it's-
answer is more of a political
Sure.
answer, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it's
Very, very, very low risk.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's just.
And I mean, they would have to overturn multiple state laws
Okay.
because we control the water and you have to have water for development.
Right.
Is the big one.
I just didn't know if this was one of those things where, well, Salem says we have to have this amount of housing available, and so. If we don't do it, somebody will do it for us, kind of a thing, or.
I think there's long-term, there's some truth to that. I
Okay.
think politically, Keith is right. We control a lot of the infrastructure, so
Right.
it'd make it really difficult. I think Keith, you're also referring to unincorporated development too. Which the county is now frowning upon because we have all kinds of problems with the low and some of those unincorporated areas where they don't have the services and infrastructure they need. So I don't think Metro would do it
Okay, right.
without us being on board. That being said, right now, I think we're the only community in the entire metro region that's even considering an ask right now. So there is, I think Metro. How do I say this? I think we have an opportunity with Metro to
Yeah, okay.
get what we need.
So with that, if Sherwood pursues a letter of interest, in December, we need to start thinking about what that would look like and based on council priorities, current land needs for employment and housing and goals and objectives of the Sherwood concept plan and, maybe some other factors that council wants to consider as well. So council priorities, we know that council has vested interest in creating a more diversified tax base. And Sherwood West does have opportunity for more employment land. We want to create a safe community, for all modes of travel, for all roads in Sherwood. And then the need to provide adequate public facilities as well. So employment land needs, we know we have a deficit of around 277 acres. Residential land needs, this was from our housing needs analysis in 2019, and we show in 2019, we had a deficit of 608 units. And as you can see here, those units are broken down by the zoning classifications. And we have a deficit in all of our zoning designations, not just one particular one, but all of them.
More than likely to be even higher if we assumed Tonquin employment area development and then Sherwood West, once we bring that in, correct?
Well, so that's an interesting question, because that housing needs analysis is a 20-year forecast, right? How many?
Should have picked up Tonquin already in it.
Yeah, and there was some assumptions.
It did, so Tonquin, it did.
Tonquin's in there.
Pick that up in 2019, because it was in our urban growth boundary at that time.
Yeah, and it's the housing needs analysis, the way that the state really mandates how you do that, so. It's based on past growth and some other factors like this, and when you start adding land, it kind of changes. Sure. But that 608 is what that forecasted that we need for the next 20 years or
Yep.
shy of 20 years. But we still have, how much land do we still have in Sherwood?
Undeveloped for housing. I don't have that acreage number off the top of my head, but it's primarily in Brookman.
Yeah, so this takes into account, this is basically saying that all of our existing supply assumes it's developed, right? So the current zoning, 100% development of all of our vacant residential land. And then even after all of that, we're still short 608 units. It assumes full development of all of our land. And then where are we at? And we're short 608.
I think for the next meeting, it'd be great to have just a quick analysis of what's available in the city limits versus. What made up that net number, basically.
You can do that.
Yeah.
Yep. And then the Sherwood West concept plan that was just recently accepted by council, there is a list of goals and objectives in that plan, and we just want to make sure that when we look at making a letter of interest with a particular area or areas of Sherwood West, that we keep these goals and objectives in mind. So 2 key questions for council's consideration this evening. Once again, is there any additional information that council would need to make an informed decision on this letter of interest to Metro due in December? And should additional community outreach be conducted? And if so, what would that look like? And what information does council need from the community to help inform a future decision? So I'm going to stop there and we can just have this discussion.
I have a question about the process with Metro. If we ask for whatever, can Metro decide to grant a portion of the area we've asked for, or do they have to accept all of our ask or none of it? And if we ask for 100 acres, can they say, well, we don't want 100, we'll give you 50? Well, I'm just using that as an example. What I don't want to happen is them to say, oh, we're going to reject this part of your ask and accept that part of it. I want it to be can they do that?
Line item veto.
Once again, I think that is probably going to be unlikely. They give deference to the communities that ask and what they want to ask for and why. This is why we've created a concept plan from the very beginning. They kind of rely on our expertise in that area.
I've never seen in I mean, they've not done a ton of these things. But the ones that, I don't believe they've ever changed the footprint of an ask.
Mhm.
I assume if they were gonna do that, we could cancel our ask then. I mean, if they did wanna do something like that.
Um,
I don't want to assume anything.
Yeah.
right, so at some point, it becomes a political conversation, and at some point it does. So,
So these are great questions. We can,
so if a request is made by the city to Metro, how much can Metro, or in what ways could Metro alter the request?
I think that's a really important question too, because. You know, at least where I'm leaning is if we do an ask, it's probably a mix of jobs and residential land. And that's new, you know, for Metro. I don't think that's happened very often, so understanding Doug's question, I think, is really important.
And then, right, what could, if we submit, how much could Metro modify it and in what ways? If Metro were to modify the city's request, if we submitted one. And the city didn't like how they were going down that path to modify, could the city still withdraw their request?
In a way that I think I heard you say, but I want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly, which is by submitting this letter, we're just keeping a door open, right? We don't
Correct.
have to walk through it for the, your second comment here about, do we need to ask other citizens and get feedback? I know we're gonna have a ton of those sessions when it comes down to, okay, what are we gonna do on a comprehensive plan and stuff like that? But this just keeps our options open versus closing that door now. Like preemptively, right?
I think Doug's question was even past the April 5th deadline. Is
Well,
what,
no, I know,
Yeah,
I'm fine. I think that question was answered. I'm just saying that on this one,
The letter of intent,
it's just but it just keeps the door open instead
so we
of,
have to give them, show the area that we hope to ask for.
right, but it doesn't say we have to, so.
it doesn't bind us, but it does, it's a lot of work for staff.
No, I know, but for
Yeah,
this
so-
second question where we're saying, do we need to have additional?
You're asking if we want to do the outreach before the letter or after the letter.
Yeah, I'm saying that we do it, it'd be my opinion, do it after the letter, because we've done a bunch before it, and we're not still, setting anything in stone yet. We're just,
But
Keeping the
when you
door
say at a minimum, we have to do outreach to at least to communicate that the community understands that just because we put a letter out there doesn't mean it's gonna happen. I
Oh,
think-
yeah.
I think we
Yeah.
still need to do some education and they may want to weigh in on. I mean, if we have a letter of intent, but then through that community process, want to change the areas.
Right.
That might be a problem.
That did come up for kind
Yeah.
of discussion last time.
Yeah. So I think we do need to be somewhat sure of the facts of the letter going into
Just
it.
because of all the work staff.
You see with the outreach, and we have to do it, and I want to do it, I think it has to be educational first, because. This is a extremely complex topic,
Yeah.
and, someone posts something on Facebook, and then all of a sudden you get 100 people show up going like, I don't want to expand, and it's like, okay, but you got to spend like 6 hours educating yourself on. What all this means and how the process works, like even our community advisory committee, it took us 4 or 5 meetings. Just to get the people on the committee who were dedicated to the process. To a level of understanding where they could provide meaningful input. It's really hard. For, a person at large in the community to. Read a blurb or sees what somebody posted on Facebook, and then. They got the pitchforks out. We have to be
Right.
prepared, and I wanna do outreach, absolutely. We just have to be meaningful and thoughtful about it, like putting up a survey saying, what do you think? Isn't gonna give us meaningful feedback.
right, so what I would suggest then is that we say, okay, whether or not we're interested as a council in doing it. But then having our outreach be that. We're doing it for these reasons, and by the way, we're not locked in, we're not, this doesn't mean a road's going through your property, it doesn't mean your property's been seized, whatever our. Crack PR department, is gonna, is gonna come up with, you know, to be able to communicate that that this is a step in the process. I feel like that's really where I want to go. I don't want to spend 8 months getting everybody up to speed that needs to, when we're really not deciding.
So just one point of clarification. Whenever we, whatever, when we do send out information to the community, focus it on the residents. I really don't care what people that own property in Sherwood West, their perspective of this part of the process. I want to be sure that the people that live in our community, that live near Sherwood West or whatever, they understand what's going on or what might be going on. So from I want to focus the communication from that perspective of that. That family that live in neighborhoods over on the other side of 99 from where we're at now, or anywhere else in town, they understand. And that's the perspective of the information.
To that end, my suggestion would be because we're thinking employment land as well as residential land. Is some of that employment land going to look like what Tonquin looks like? So having visuals so that people are out there will see it and understand it, hopefully a little bit better. I mean, that's down the road, but
Once the trees are planted.
well,
Oh, that's-
that, but having some of the above ground, I mean, not above ground, all buildings are above ground, but. Seeing it out there on like Oregon Street and Tonquin employment and then seeing it in Sherwood West is. Very different from what it looks like right now. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. So just kind of going back to this conversation about when we do the public outreach. A very important question around that is, if we do a letter that says, we're gonna do this area, this area, and this area, and it's gonna be, this is residential and this is industrial. Can we change that? Between then and the April, the final submittal date, because if we can't change those details, then we need to do more public outreach now, is my opinion.
Yeah, I thought that was more what the comprehensive plan was, but am I
No,
not?
we have to, part of our submittal is, correct me if I'm wrong, is these are the areas we're looking at and what the uses are.
Couldn't we just?
We want this industrial, we want.
I know, but isn't it like, this is what our intent is, not we had actually zoned this?
No, but if we're not talking about zoning, we're not talking about zoning, we're talking about Metro's gonna come back. Can we change that?
So the general description of anticipated employment, residential use.
Between the letter of interest and the. full-
Yeah, can we
Yes.
change it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Most
I
definitely.
thought would be in the letter of interest, we'd say. The entirety of Sherwood West potentially in scope, and then we would hone it down through the process to what we actually asked
Yeah.
for.
That's how I read that as well, was.
Could take
No,
that.
that's not how I read it, that's my.
No, I read it as, we do the ask and we think it'll be this much industrial, this much light, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then they say thumbs up and we come back and we do the actual, okay, here's where the markers will be for. You know, it's just a letter of interest or a letter of intent, right? Is not we have plotted it out and we now know exactly what the division is gonna be and where the streets are gonna go and all of the other, that's later.
We're not, and that's not what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Between the letter or
Let's
the.
talk about different things.
Yeah, I just want to be clear, Mayor, you're not talking about a change to the concept plan.
No,
You're talking
no,
about a
no.
Change to the ask
Just
about.
They asked.
Proposal itself.
Yeah, and
There is different ways potentially of doing this request. So if we say, hey, Metro, we're interested,
Yeah.
and it's as vague as that. There were some level of Sherwood West, we want to.
Somewhere between none and all.
Right.
Okay.
Or at least some to all.
Yeah.
From my perspective, at this point. Based on some more questions that we need answers to, but, can the letter say that, say, hey, we're interested in some range of the area of Sherwood West at this point? Or do we have to be more defined than that with the letter of interest in December?
This says estimated metrics for jobs and housing. anticipated usage.
Great, I'm.
That's on the full letter, not the
No, we're talking
letter.
about the December letter. It says needs to include the urban reserve area of interest and a general description of anticipated employment
Oh, I see what
/
you're
residential uses, acreages, estimated metrics for jobs and housing.
Right, so it doesn't answer my question, which is.
Yeah.
Or Tim's specific question of. Whatever we put in the letter in December, in the letter and the final. Potential ask. Change from the city's perspective come spring of next year or summer of next year.
That's
You
the
think it
question
can,
we'd
it
ask.
can, it definitely can.
Okay.
Okay, this letter is not binding the city to anything.
Whatsoever.
Staff needs a general, will need some direction though, because it's a lot of work then to actually prepare the April.
Right, I mean, you're also giving a heads up and an indication to us and our stakeholders and everyone else. So we will, between December and April, staff will have to put together the formal application. And so it's, if we do the LOI and then in February, March, there's a big change, that's gonna be likely problematic from an application standpoint. So yes, we can still change after the LOI, but we want to get it locked in as soon as possible so we can actually prepare the application and make a strong ask to Metro.
I guess I wasn't thinking about that as a change. I was thinking about it as
You find,
a refinement. We have a funnel and
Yeah.
we're getting closer and closer to the final ask. So if we say in December, we're considering the entirety, and then we come in February and say, okay, now that we've had our outreach, we've had our discussions. We want to focus on this portion of it instead. You're saying that's a change. I'm saying that's a refinement, or that's just getting tighter on our ask. But if you want to have a clear definition of what portion we want to ask for by December 1st, then that's a very different conversation in my mind.
And another way of asking is, when do you need the specifics so you can put together the official
Yeah,
ask?
one of their, can I take a look? I mean, it's like, the big thing that Metro is gonna look at is Title 11 findings. So just like when we review applications, they have their own criteria for yay or nay on a concept plan. And whether or not it should be brought into the urban growth boundary. Right now, we've prepared findings, we have findings for the whole area, right? And we say, here's how we meet all your criteria with the entire ask. And so I think we could probably do something pretty quick. Why don't Erica and I look at how much time we need to refine something based on a different area. But for example, they're gonna want to look at financing for infrastructure. So if we say only this area, we might need to refine, that analysis to say, yeah, don't worry, every property owners and everybody, the financing still works for infrastructure. And here's why, and here's the SDC rate and all that sort of stuff. So
And your infrastructure is going to be phased anyway. I mean, you're not going to build out all the infrastructure at once.
well, and that's, you can do different things. So, sometimes you need to put a pretty significant bit of infrastructure in. An area, and so,
Yeah.
but not all that area would be potentially developed, on day one.
Like the Brookman trunk line for sewer that's, 3 years late now? Yeah.
yeah.
Sherwood's not like late, just want to be clear on that. Cutting water services.
So,
Yeah.
So what's the concern though? Because we've all seen the concept plan and we voted on it, right? We're generally aligned of what we think. And so is the concern that some feedback would come between our December letter and our final ask that we would say, oh, shoot, this is wrong?
Well, hey, there could be some law change that might piss everybody off.
well, also, because the concept plan was not tied to any timeline. The concept plan was when we develop Sherwood West at some point in the future, this we like what it looks like. It doesn't mean that any of us voted to commit to this particular ask.
Well, and there's another
Okay.
Council
important,
changes.
the council changes, that's what happened last time when we revoked our letter. But there's another important piece of this, and we're gonna talk about an aspect of this here in a minute. I want to make sure we have time for it, but. How there was the Senate bill that took our voter annexation away. And gives us the opportunity to set up annexation rules. So what are the things we need to put in place? To make sure we can manage the growth once it's brought into the urban growth boundary? Because for those that are listening. What's the Senate bill?
1587.
Senate Bill 1587.
1573.
1573. You got a slide for me.
That was close.
That was an awesome segue, but that bill basically took away voter annexations. It allows us to put some annexation rules in place. A lot of this has not been tested in the courts, and we need to really understand what this looks like, what tools we can get in place. So, because right now we don't have annexation rules, so if we were to bring in land today, a property owner could basically pop up and say, I want my land to come into Sherwood. And
Well, as long as it's contiguous to city limits.
well, contiguous, yes, but the point is, beyond contiguous, without those rules, we can't control it. Yeah, so we have to, another part of this is, what are the tools that we need to get in place to manage this?
Yeah.
So,
And how real are the tools?
and how real are the tools?
So going back to what you asked for, what do we need by December first? To me, this is one of the things I need is a clear plan to have this in place that with teeth before we do the actual official ask in the spring.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can respond to that right now. You can require,
I want an attorney.
yeah,
Telling me that.
we can get an attorney here, but.
I want to hear,
So we've asked an attorney, but we can forward you that email. We asked in preparation.
I want an attorney in the room.
For this meeting.
Okay,
I'm not, period.
okay, that's fine.
Another
I hear Eric's answer.
You're in the room, right?
Well, I will take.
Okay.
So what we've done is we've engaged a land use attorney that's an expert in this area. This is a very nuanced area of law, very untested area of law. And so we will have somebody here the next work session on that or discussions about it. So but, I think we've had this conversation and we'll have somebody here to assuage any concerns.
I think
Because an email is not sufficient.
I think in the conversation that I would want, and that we could, this probably isn't information for staff, but conversation for council is, well, and staff, because the annexation is gonna be part of that, but is it easier to plan the entire, if we were to bring all of it in? How much control do we have over making sure our concept plan
That was.
turns out, turns out the way we want, as opposed to chunking pieces in? And will we be able to keep our
We need
concept
to-
alive?
Manage the growth.
And that's great. Or that's a great question to be answered at the next meeting.
Yeah, it's part of the challenge here is, the state has set up these statutes around this stuff. But it hasn't been tested in court yet. And
What part?
how far, like, for instance, how far can we go with annexation, right? Because the law is not really clear on that. And so, we want to have as much protection as we can in terms of be able to managing the growth and keeping the charm and livability of Sherwood intact. And my opinion is we press that right to the limit, but this is where a good attorney, and not that this is not your area.
Yeah, there are things that are
And I,
very nuanced.
and I applaud you for taking the lead and getting that land use attorney in, but so we can talk about that and, and how far we can push that, because eventually this stuff's gonna get challenged in court, and precedent is really what's gonna define what we can and can't do.
Second, I think what Kim was saying, which is I want to dovetail onto, is separate from the annexation conversation. It's really how do we ensure the actual development follows as closely as possible to the actual concept plan, which will get turned into a comprehensive plan, whether that be through master planning or some other tools. What are those tools? What do they look like in the light of all of the new laws that have happened and may continue to happen at the state level? Because that's the other thing I need to see is what kind of assurances do we have that the end result we get actually matches what we all said we wanted, and our community spent years saying they wanted as close as possible, realizing it's not going to be 100%.
Standards come in and things like that, though.
There's a plethora of options, and it's important to talk about that. So you can go to the extreme of Villa Bois. Villa Bois was a planned neighborhood.
I don't even know if we can do that anymore, though.
A very extreme plan with phases, very controlled. And as an
But it
example.
looks exactly like what you planned it.
It
The
looks
park
like-
is located exactly where you said it was gonna be before it
And that's a level of, and then that's a level of control we have not done in Sherwood, but should we consider it? Financing as the, you know, the ability to finance, you know, to get feedback on that is important. Do we have the ability to get the infrastructure that's needed for that whole area? By you ask for only part of it, or do you really need to do all of it? So you have this umbrella of a financing mechanism, but with very rigid annexation or phasing of the space.
So President, with us being the only ones who are gonna probably be doing an ask in the area. Are there other cities that have wrestled with the annexation rules? Do we have somebody to copy from, or is this totally?
So no, the kind of rules keep changing, but certainly the phasing, I think you're referring to, the phasing rules. Hillsborough has done it. Wilsonville certainly has done it. So there's, I know.
We understand how the phasing rules and the annexation rules are linked. Because I thought the annexation was if a homeowner, if a landowner says, I want in, and they're contiguous, or whatever, they're in unless we set up annexation rules. Is that right? And then the phasing, how is that?
So annexation, people have rights. They're pretty boilerplate clear on annexation when they have property owners have rights to be annexed if they meet the list of criteria. But from a phasing standpoint of a master planned or area, they could request to be annexed. And we'd allow them to be annexed, but they wouldn't have the right to develop. Unless we authorize that phase or the phase that property is part of.
Okay, I get that. All right.
So a good example is what's happened on Murdoch, because that whole the other side of the road from here was built out in basically 4 chunks. And each phase, they said, oh, we'll do the park in the next one, we'll do the park in the next one, and then
We didn't end up with.
the last builder gets stuck with the park.
Yeah.
Right, so how do we make sure that that's fair and that all the amenities are getting put in that we want in our concept land?
Okay. I didn't hear, so, community outreach, what feedback do you want from the community? I haven't heard that yet.
I'm challenged to answering that question because I'm trying to figure out how we would get it,
Mhm.
but maybe I should let you guys figure that out.
Yeah, we need to know what you guys want to know and we can help you get it.
Well, at base level, I want to know where there's an education component. I think Keith brought that up in the beginning, and I think
Maybe that is the public outreach, is an education, town hall education and allowing question and answer that.
we need to educate, allow the Q&A, and then I want to know after we've done that, what they think. And.
Basically, the simple question, should we do an ask or not?
Exactly.
I don't know how.
Well-
I don't know about this, should we do an ask?
Because you're gonna. If that's in some sort of like poll. It's gonna get forwarded to a bunch of people who've done no research.
Or don't live
There's a
in
lot
the
of
city
things you can
limits.
I'm not necessarily.
I'm just saying, I'm worried about that.
We need to take the temperature of the.
I totally agree with you. I'm just like, how do we do it in a way where the people that are giving us the temperature have done the requisite amount of education component to make that number meaningful? Because otherwise, 1,000 people get forwarded something and they spam no's or
Maybe
yeses.
we get
because
their
that's
opinion before they leave the town hall.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm more interested in free form comment in this scenario probably than a vote.
Yeah.
Or people that, or in person, like, hey, we're gonna walk you through a presentation and then we wanna know what you think, right? I don't think,
But what I don't want to have happen, and I agree with you, but what I don't want to have happen is one of these box checking exercises.
Yeah.
Where a group.
I want it
say,
to be
"This is what
meaningful."
We want Q and As, Kim said, we want interaction, we want to hear what they have to.
I wanna be there.
They might have some good ideas that we haven't even considered.
And I want us to get the information out there other than other groups putting out their own information and doing their own surveys.
Mhm, mhm.
And a lot of people thought that was the city doing that,
Gotcha.
and it wasn't.
Any others like specific aspects of the plan you want feedback on?
I think that's where some of the visuals come into play. Because we're talking about industrial land, we're talking about housing, and you've got very distinct sides of people who think, okay, let's just do housing, or let's just do industrial, and we're talking a mix. So having some photos that might show what that mix might look like
I think the
some
concept plan
capacity.
has a good start at some of these things. If
Yeah.
you look at the different zone, the different kind of. Zones, but the different, you know, how. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Another area we haven't talked about that I think is important, and it's related to the annexation stuff, but. You know, since Wilsonville did build law, we had HB 2001 pass, which in 2019, which. Gives developers a lot of leeway to decide what mode of housing is built on a lot. So
But does a master plan
that's the question, is like, if we do master plan. Or we do an annexation agreement with a developer. I still haven't heard a good
I've
answer.
never gotten this answer to my
Yeah, does
satisfaction.
HB 2001 trump that, meaning that we could do that master plan and it's a mix of single family detached, duplexes and triplexes. And then the builder can come in and say, you know, under HB 2001, I'm just gonna build what I want. So we really need to understand that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know, Ryan, you've told me we don't have answers yet, but that's why I'm forward. Yeah. This is all new stuff for a lot of communities.
And so it's not,
And I know this is a council decision, but I'm curious, what is staff's thoughts about what we should do?
In terms of what the feedback, or do you want us to
No,
actually
about-
answer that question? About what?
About the direction that we should go with.
Do you want to do an ask? I think.
Yeah, do you want to do it?
you don't have to answer if you don't want to. That's such a loaded.
It's up to the community. It's,
But you guys have to do the work, so I was curious.
Yeah.
work is work.
We'll
They need your support.
They're planning, this is their. Love the plan. They're planners, they want to plan.
We'll provide as much feedback as you guys want, and if you guys would like a staff recommendation at the end of this, we can give you one. You know, if you
I mean,
guys,
normally you give us some sort of recommendation, that's why I'm asking the question.
yeah, so we don't have, you know, and I think in this case. You know, there's no code. It's not like we're in a quasi judicial where there's code and staff has reviewed the code and you guys haven't had time to review it likely in a lot of detail. So it's not a situation like that. It is more of a policy decision, which is why I think staff's backing out a little bit. But if you guys would like some feedback, we're happy to give it. I think Luciano role is very technical, you know, if you need, hey, we're thinking about this, what impact is that going to have on infrastructure, financing, or whatever, we can get you that info. So we're going to give you all the alternative. We're going to do as many options as you can based on kind of what we're hearing.
Kind of with that in mind, and as a segue into our next agenda, you know, we have a lot of stuff on our goals and objectives for this year. The staff is working on, and I know they're working hard and doing a great job, but if during this process, you guys raise your hand and say, hey, for us to meet the goals and objectives of council on this process, we need help, we need consultants, we need this, we need that. Please ask if we need to do a budget adjustment with around. We want to help you with that. We don't want you to be overloaded. Breaking.
Anything else on annexation? Sorry, go ahead.
So do we have? Rough maps, they don't have to be super precise maps on locations of our infrastructure near that and the direction of flow for sewer, where sewer's got to go from here to there on that entire side would be great.
Mhm.
And then where our water infrastructure is now and what major pieces need to be built over there.
Can I refine that a little bit?
Sure.
Like a heat map of readiness, you know, that says like, this land is ready in 2 years for development. This land is ready in 4 years, 5 years, and kind of with notes about sewers. I think that's where you're getting at.
And would you do it by infrastructure, or would you say, hey, we need the revenue that comes from light industrial, so we want to build that first, and you know what I mean?
I think that's another data point we need. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, but I think that readiness piece is important. Yeah.
okay.
Well, also
And
depends on.
I generally am not overly I'm not as concerned as the mayor is with readiness. I want to know. For instance,
Availability.
right, you know, where is the sewer points over there?
There's gonna be a natural staging just on the fact that like, in order to get to here, you're gonna have to do this first, so it's gonna kind of be.
Things run downhill, so you start in the valley and you go up the hill, so.
But it also helps inform us if we're gonna go after like infrastructure grants and stuff
Yep.
like that.
It's all important.
What that looks like.
And then the severity of the requirement for infrastructure? I mean, so just, yeah, don't be that bad, or it's, oh my God, it's gonna be horrific. And I think I know the answer already, but I'm just asking the question. You know, wow, to put water out there is gonna be a piece of cake or a whoof, watch out. You know, I'm just picking on water, but we know the key ones that we.
Is there something more? So that's in the concept plan now. Is there something more that you're looking for?
Well, I'll dig out the page, but I didn't think
So we have two appendices. One is financing and one is for just the overall plan. So,
But we can go over that again, because I mean, it's detailed
There's. yes.
and it's
Right,
nuanced.
so I mean,
and
a couple
nuanced as
couple
well.
people around lived it through the committee and. So,
Mhm.
All right, with that.
Is there anything else we need to get through on this presentation?
Are we
I know
good?
We're still a few slides short.
we're okay.
I think we're okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, thank you guys. So, we'll take just a quick 5-minute break, because I need one. And then we'll start. So we'll be back. Let's have a 4-minute break. How's that? Jump up here. I look at you. You want to sit next to President Mays.
Nice to meet
Oh, Mayor Mays, because that's what I always remember. Mayor Mays, I think you just need to change your first name. from Ethan there. Do a name change, right?
Hey, Sean, welcome to.
I haven't a survey.
Disney was fun. huh?
They showed those 5 areas.
Yeah, that's, yeah, you don't. Usually do Disney,
There's 2 of them.
California Adventure, and then back to Disney.
That's exactly what we did this time. Yeah, and
By the 3rd day, when I go back to Disney, I'm doing people watching while Scott, the kids are still running around.
yeah, you definitely see the energy level tailed off. a
The
little
2
towards the
low
end, so there's a little bit
areas,
more
because they have the phase
here.
Yeah.
and you're gonna phase them.
Yeah, no problem.
You either just-
And the summer.
If you can control it, in my opinion, if you can control it through a master
Saturday.
planning, bring it all in, master
Yeah,
plan
and
it,
then
have
right
it.
away, I got one.
If you can't master
And everything I do the next
Okay,
day.
huh?
Then you
I
need
didn't
to bring
know you
it
were chair
in.
from the library. I
So you-
saw you comment somewhere that you were. I'm like, oh.
That's my,
Yeah, I think they're just.
that's my opinion, and having lived through the, what?
She didn't want to come back.
Oh, yeah,
But stepped up.
You heard it in my conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those chocolate chip or those oatmeal raisin?
It looks like a mixture.
It's a mixture of both.
Nothing worse than chocolate chip and oatmeal raisin.
Yeah, that's like the most.
It's like Charlie Brown football, you know?
Yeah.
I'm like, we have catering and recreation valley that just got shut down. I was out there. I mean, like. People who are 40 or 50 hours already still open. You know what I mean? Because
We don't do that for day. Like you can.
No, I know, but. Right, but it has to be the. Because. It was awesome. Yeah, we had, sometimes people were like, well, I don't want. The only problem. I don't want people like this things to have a same, they have a strong vested, which doesn't always happen. Strongly.
So sometimes we have some.
Often.
Sick.
Based on.
So it was a good.
It's not. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, we're not a lot of. Like. That's a fun thing.
Yeah. You know, it's. It is about. the whole, And
That's right, that's what I'm. Stuff on our OSCA. Yeah, there's a female astronaut, kind of a young gal. Went through space camp as a kid or something like. There's a bunch of them, like Christina Koch, which is related to the Artemis mission. It's a space camp graduate. Yeah, a woman who just flew on 36 or 37 that just went out. Space camp. Yeah, it's if you go to our website. That's all the underlying things about the whole system.
And I imagine for the adults too, I'm sure you're geeking out every time.
I mean, yeah, well, I you know, there. You could have one of the. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got to see that. One night at the hotel, I was drinking a bunch of. One of the astronauts. Test drove.
Grab that.
Oh, right there.
Say, okay, we don't like the ones.
Yeah, it's not mine.
Wait around the year from now, the laws to be even more onerous, more density, higher density, less ability.
All right,
The devil we know.
Brad, we good?
The devil we know.
Awesome. I agree. All right. Welcome, everybody, to second half of our work session. This is super exciting for me to get all you guys in the room so we can have a conversation about council goals and goals for your committees and process. Before, I have a few more things I want to say, but I think the first thing we should do is introduce everybody. I'm not sure everyone's met yet, so
I think you guys know me, I'm Tim Rosner, I'm the mayor, and I'm gonna go ahead and kick over to Kim.
Kim Young, City Council.
Sorry. Renee Brown, City Council.
Doug Scott, City Council.
City Council.
David Sharman, Park and Rec Board.
Gene Simpson, Planning Commission.
Katie Strode, Budget Committee.
Sean Garland.
And Brian Dorsey, Youth Advisory Board.
Brian Adams.
Houston Worth.
Taylor Giles, City Council.
Keith Campbell, City Manager.
Awesome. Well,
Keith Mays.
did we?
I was with my chair.
Oh.
It wasn't intention.
All right, I know, I'm the one who stood up.
Anyways, welcome everybody. So, I'm excited about this meeting because, for a couple of reasons. We do want to go over council goals and objectives and answer any questions that you guys might have about those goals and objectives for the year. But I also, later in the meeting, want to talk about process. You know, one of the things that I was thinking about when I became mayor was how do we change how council and boards and commissions interact? How do we make sure that we know what you guys are thinking about? And you guys know what we're thinking about, so we don't get misaligned, right? And have potential where you guys, I'd hate to have it where you guys just work forever on something and are really proud and the council goes, well, like, what's this? You know, we don't want that. So I think making sure we talk to each other on a regular basis is really important. So part of this meeting, I want to talk about what that process looks like and how do we align it with our next visioning session? And I really hate calling it visioning session. It's our goals and objectives sessions that the council does, which will probably be late December, January of next year. And how do we make sure we're getting good input from you guys as we set these priorities up that we're going to talk about? Because these priorities, just as a real quick overview, we set these objectives and priorities. Staff comes back with a project list, basically, of what they're going to accomplish under that. And it may be in that year or maybe a 2-year project, whatever that looks like. And then that helps define the budget. So getting your input as we go into that goals and objectives is really important because once we set this and once the budget's set, it's hard to add things, right? If you guys are thinking about something that we haven't thought about. So that's kind of my goal for this meeting. Is anyone else in council want to pipe in? No? Any initial thoughts from our chairs?
I'll just say, having a council representative at our meeting, I feel like we have he gets, Councilor Scott gets a good idea of what we're thinking, the discussion we have. He lets us know what you're thinking, and that's been going on. I know when you were gone.
Too much usually.
Oh, yeah, I'll step in. So we've had I felt from Park and Rec, we've had a really good connection.
And that's a really good point. I don't want to diminish the roles that the councilors have had in attending your meetings. This is more about, you know, how can we make this more robust? And especially as it comes to when we go through goals and objectives. And if you guys have a project you've been thinking about that maybe we're not thinking about, you know, let's talk, you know, let's see if there's consensus to get
I
that.
think one thing
Yeah.
that we've probably never done, as at least me as a liaison, when we have approved these, have taken them back to our board that we liaison to and say, hey, or even pass them out to our board, just so you know, these are the goals that council is working on here. I know I've never done that for my as a liaison, so it's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
So awesome. So has everyone seen these?
1 minute ago.
Earlier today. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, on the wall
So
and in the links.
So does everybody agree to worthwhile to just kind of go through each of one of these and we can talk about it, and get questions and stuff like that? So unfortunately, these aren't necessarily divided up by board or commission. They're divided up by kind of general areas, as you can see, economic development, infrastructure, livability, workability. So let's just jump into it, and we'll start with economic development. And I can talk about some of this, but anyone who wants to chime in, let's keep this free flowing. If council wants to chime in with their thoughts on it as well, go for it. I think a lot of you know we really changed focus back in 2017, 2018 around housing production to economic development production, like that. We've come a long ways on that. We've had a lot of good momentum and a lot of good projects done on that, but a lot of the reasons that we're doing that, obviously, what we want a diverse economy. We want to balance our tax rate. That's really important. I can throw this out, our tax base to the tax rate. What that means is it costs us more money per dollar that we bring in to service residential areas than it does to service jobs land. So, and right now we're about 85% residential. So it makes it really difficult in terms of our ongoing financial situation if we keep going down that path. So if we have more jobs land, we're changing that balance. We're not necessarily having to go to the voters and ask for more money. So that's part of what we're thinking there with that. Work with Metro and regional partners, state of Oregon, for West and in the UGB. We just had a session to talk about that. You want to bring jobs to Sherwood that provide wages that allow people to live and work in Sherwood. And that's it's getting more and more difficult to commute to the work centers around here. So if we can provide more opportunities for people to live and work here, there's all kinds of things.
And I think, what's the percentage of people that commute out if you were to go to work?
We
It's
have,
really high.
yeah, according to Census on the Go, we have about 9,000 people that leave the city every day to work.
Is that post-pandemic?
Yes. That's
Yeah.
the new 2020 data.
That's a lot.
We have 800 people that live and work here, and then probably about 3,000 people that come and go to community. So
This one also kind of ties into, I mean, obviously, if we only brought in jobs that were 50,000 a year and up, then that would be great, but is this one tied to also having lower cost housing? And so, you know what I mean, like, we wanted to both live and work in Sherwood. One part of that equation is jobs that pay well. Another part is houses that are,
But that's
Let-
under
I think that gets
livability.
into livability.
right, but I'm saying, have we actually linked those together in terms of that goal?
I don't think
don't
we've
think so.
officially, we have it in two different sections.
Okay, all right.
At this point.
Do you have a metric for how many you want to keep here and how many, like 9,000 leaving Sherwood right now? What do you want to change? Like, what's the metric?
So what's that, 2018 and 19, there's a metric we're tracking in terms of the tax base. We follow that jobs metric. The problem with the jobs metric is the census updates it like every 3 or 4 years, so it's hard to really follow that one. But having good KPIs so we can measure our success in that, I think is really important. And I think the one we're looking at, Eric's not here anymore, but in Bruce, is more around tax base. Right?
I mean, we've looked at what some other cities are, we know. That Wilsonville is about 40% of their revenue is from industrial and commercial, we're about 80%.
Why are we at 40%?
We haven't set a goal of where we want to get to. I think
Okay.
yeah, what our goal is right now is we want it to go up. At some point, we'll probably need to figure out where we want to find that. Where we want to find that equilibrium. We haven't, we were just so low. I mean, 18% is under, we're so underwater. It's like, at this point, it's just like, we just need to get it up. Let's figure out what the right number is. You know,
We did 1,200 acres of Sherwood West industrial, still would be a pretty small percentage. I mean, it'd be maybe 30% if we did all of Sherwood West industrial or jobs.
Not that you're suggesting.
I did, but I didn't win that conversation. There was some compromise. But it's the alternative, just to be clear, we can stay a bedroom community if we wanted to, if there's a whole lot of reason not to, from a tax base perspective of just paying the bills. If we stayed a bedroom community, then we would all have to kind of collectively agree to tax ourselves more.
or have less services.
Or have less services, or probably both. So if you want to have a successful, thriving community, you definitely want to go back, and you don't want everybody to leave town every morning and come back at night. It's also not the formula for a thriving, vibrant community.
And you can see there's a list of projects there. We don't have to go through all those in detail, but if you have questions, feel free to ask.
So oddly, our, in the planning commission, our agenda is driven more by applications coming in, so we can't drive our own agenda. But if we were to come up with an idea, what avenue do you want us to use to say, we see a need? We have our counselor liaison, but is there another avenue, or are you planning on regular interval meetings where we can brainstorm with you to say, as a commission, we feel that this is a good project that would be under consideration and have.
Yeah, and Dan does a great job of updating council at the end of the council meeting on that stuff. But what I think what you're looking for is what also I'm looking for is what's that process, you know, for a bill to become a law, basically, right? You know, and if you have an idea, how do we get that into this process and vet it and get agreement that, yeah, we're gonna go spend some money and we're gonna go do this. And I think,
It should be something more than just food liaison, I think,
Yeah.
some sort of a.
I could see two things, like, I mean, one, I think we do some of this already, we could maybe be more intentional about it, is having like work sessions, right, where, okay, planning commission, let's set up a planning commission council joint work session where we talk about their ideas and vet them out, right? Or you can do that with all the committees and boards. And that could be either ad hoc when the, you know, if someone from the library board, if Sean talks to his liaisons or staff and says, hey, we have these ideas we've come up with, we run them by council, great, then let's schedule a work session. Or maybe we have some sort of like fiesta at the end of the year before we go into our yearly planning where we get everybody's ideas all at once.
So we sort of have, but clearly sometimes those ideas don't get down on paper or they don't get the sunlight that the board of commissions might hope that they would. But I mean, we've had the SWOT analysis or other reports, year-end reports from boards of commissions say, hey, here's what's good and bad of the last year. Here's some concerns that we have for the coming year, and here's what we really, opportunities was kind of the thing of, hey, here's ideas, council, eventually put in goals. And we had a very various levels of success of getting ideas either on there, a goal, or if the idea might have been overlooked.
And one thing I want to be very careful about, though, I kind of lean towards what Doug was saying about maybe having more of a larger group setting on it, just because I would like for it not to be, hey, city council has said no to library's idea, and so it's not making the cut on the budgets. I would rather have Sean go back and say, hey, I heard, you know, the police and the parks, and I agree that theirs were a higher priority for the community. You know what I mean? Because I feel like even though everybody here has their kind of representative, we all live here, and it might be a little bit better to be able to help prioritization, to be able to say whether or not, you know, okay, well, we've got to draw a line somewhere. We don't have unlimited resources. We don't have unlimited staff time. We can't just keep making our list longer and longer. We've got to make some hard decisions as a city to say, this is what we can afford to do this.
I mean, that almost sounds like a governing council, basically reviewing projects and prioritizing.
Yeah.
To some extent, we can provide input into those but there's a lot that I don't know from the library board that, you know, going on the planning commission.
Yeah.
Where you're at with spend or goals or anything, so.
Would there,
I know you're
almost like-
you're gonna talk about process later.
It's almost like an advice.
All of it, but.
go ahead.
Would there be value in having someone from each board and commission attend the annual board or council goal setting?
In addition to the staff.
I'll get that.
There's nothing, oh, yes, you can, but.
I mean,
I think,
there's many people around one table.
I think that was part of the process conversation I want to have, you know, what's the best way to accomplish that? Because I think at the root of it for me is it's not just a piece of paper that says, here's a project we want to do. There has to be some dialogue before we can talk about it. And what's the best way to get that?
yeah, even if it's simply the board chair or board commission chair. To me, that they're having conversation with their board commission before coming, then they're representing that board commission and dialoguing with council and staff. It opens up dialogue to a much greater.
I think there'd be value in having those conversations before the goal setting session now.
I agree.
So.
Yeah, I think that's
we have something.
kind of what I was getting at in
Yeah,
my.
we have something to push, make sure that it can.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think, I'll let.
No, 100%. So I want to make sure we have plenty of time to get through all these. So the infrastructure. And council, feel free to jump in if I get some of the context wrong. But a lot of,
Infrastructure's not a goal. I'll
it's a,
reiterate that, the 8th year in a row.
yeah, it's a list of key projects that we have basically. And a lot of these are going to be very familiar to some of you already. The pedestrian bridge, which we're hoping to start construction into the year, beginning of the year. Sherwood broadband and the fiber to home project, new public works facility. And by the way, that one, for those of you not aware, by moving that facility, we open up a lot of. There's a big housing development component to that. The Cedar Creek pedestrian wildlife undercrossing. That's lifting 99 and creating a really safe trails connection across the highway there at Cedar Creek, so kids can get to the middle school safely. And a lot of things we've talked about as a council is how do we connect East and West Sherwood? So part of it's about safety for our kids, and part of it's about trail systems and connecting our community. And the example I always give, in 20 years that a kid get on a bike at LeBeau and Elward out there and go all the way to Rainbow Market and back, and the parents feel safe. Kid's gonna get there safely, and I mean that's how I think about it. It's how we connect. Anything else from council on that? Did I get it right? That's right. It's just list of projects. Any thoughts on that from our chairs? Especially planning commission, if you see projects or you see things in town we need to be doing, we should be talking about that.
That's what I was just thinking about when and Counselor Scott was talking about doing a pre-meeting before you guys do your goals, and if our SWOT analysis turned into a list of projects so that you guys could either identify them or prioritize them.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's,
Having 14 of us at a table is.
yeah, but I
would be
do think there's
difficult.
value in like, everybody brings. You get two things or three or whatever, right? You gotta pitch one thing or two things to the city council, and
Mhm.
you come and you make your pitch. And then we all talk about it, including
Mhm.
you.
Like a newer expanded library perhaps.
Yeah, or whatever you want to pitch. I mean, it doesn't mean it's gonna make it good.
And comes with a plan for funding as well.
Right.
Sean with some art on it.
Well, of course. Nice barrel on the side.
Any other questions on infrastructure? Let's jump into live, building, workability. So a lot of stuff in here, continuing to support and enhance our senior center services, which is hugely important. Trails and walkability, which we talked about. Promote and monitor diverse housing that will accommodate a wide variety of life stages and needs. And I can think that's what you were talking about, Taylor. Keep having to think that through so I don't say Tyler. Yes, public art, obviously. We made some headway this year. We've allocated some money in the budget for public art, which is amazing. Mental health and wellness within the organization and the community. Investment in community gathering spaces or community enhancements.
Made some progress on that too.
Yeah, we got a great new Sherwood Robin Hood Plaza out there.
I was gonna say, if we're gonna say progress we've made, we've also funded some mental health and wellness with both the police department with an additional person, and also the money we gave last week to the family resource center.
Justice Center, which does amazing
Yeah.
work for, yep.
And the work that's being done at the Senior Center with Pearls program.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go.
Yep. And then investment in parks and it's, and acquiring land, and some of you may not be aware of this, but we're constantly on the lookout for banking land for the future. It's cheaper to buy it now than later. That little red house on Roy Rogers on the left is right before you get to the bridge.
Yeah.
We purchased that whole property, last year? 2 years ago? 2 years ago? Yeah, so,
This one was the interim.
eventually that's potentially a great new park, on that side of town, so we're also doing that. So great. Any questions, comments On this.
updating the development code, so it's easier to do upgrades in Old Town. Look at the development code.
Do you think we need to take a new look at the full overlay?
Yeah, because sometimes we get feedback that sometimes it's hard to do something in Old Town because of the process is a little onerous.
It's been a really long time since we looked at that.
Yeah, we heard that from the Sherwood Main Street. Thing from all the people there. In fact, I would even say that part of this would be doing some incentives to, that maybe through the Sherwood Main Street organization or something to say, hey, we would like, you know, we've got this rubric for trying to attract certain businesses, you know, like apparently Tigard and Tualatin do, to say, hey, we want to, you know, a butcher shop down in Old Town or something, or, you know, whatever we're saying that we want to do, and it may offset some of those SDCs. So I would like to do something like that.
And the URA might be a mechanism for that.
Yeah, that's how Tigard did it apparently.
Tiger's doing it.
Yeah.
I've always thought we should take a look at the overlay. You know, on the other side of that coin, I know there's a lot of people commenting about the new building going in next to Symposium. You know, and do we need to look at our overlay to make sure we're getting the right type of architecture and
Just when it came before the planning commission, the side facing the other, not Symposium, but the other one was a blank wall.
We worked hard.
We worked hard at the planning commission because
Yeah.
that was going to be a solid wall with no windows, no architectural features. That corner was going to be one large blank wall.
Which one?
So
The side of Symposium.
Second.
opposite.
Second Street.
So
Okay.
the opposite of Symposium on the other
Gotcha.
side, where it was facing our community, that was going to be
Driving up that street.
windowless with no architectural features.
Wow.
So it was, so that helps the proper interpretation of the code, the planning commission did.
they were
Someone
assuming it was in the
complained.
corner lot.
Yeah.
basically.
Well, yeah, I think the planning commission had to step up to that and
We appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, you guys did great work on that, but I do think it's a great project for us to look at and say. What's
do we
working,
like it and
what's not
what,
working? Yeah,
yeah.
And why is it here? Because our code allows it. That's, community
required
doesn't
to-
understand why.
Yeah.
And, you know, and since it's going up, hopefully the final rendering is, it will certainly look much different than just a bunch of OSB on.
Mhm.
And it really makes a difference as to how people feel about it based on what goes in those retail spaces, right? So that's where
Not
the,
Retail spaces.
they're not retail, but
The live work, the workspaces on
the
the
underneath
ground.
spot.
And the neighboring buildings, if
Yeah.
other neighboring buildings come in at the same height, you're creating a density requirement that Old Town needs to have a vibrant downtown.
Question on that point, because we hear it a lot even with what's going on over off of Tonquin. Are we able to speak to the developers and say you're required to put your conceptual plans on the fence? So like people driving by it, they'll see, okay, this is what it's going to look like and don't see it for just as it is. You know, so if people want to say, okay, what's coming here, they'll have a visual, okay, this is how nice.
Kind of what I was getting at when we're talking about Sherwood West, is that whole concept too.
I don't think we require that right now. Some builders do it just because they're smart and they know. What's going on.
But before hearing, they put a QR code out there, they can see it, but what if they can't maintain that QR code for people after the hearing can still know where to go to see all the plans? It's a good idea.
Mhm.
Any other questions or thoughts on livability and workability? Public safety, obviously, public safety is always a huge priority for us. So kind of things we talked about in the last one, obviously, public safety planning and staying on top of where we're at, because, you know, once the problems come, it's a lot harder to take care of them than if you just keep the problems from coming to the city in the first place.
You don't know the small stuff.
That's right. Collaborating with the school district, which we've had some you know, we've been wanting to add SROs for a while, and we just added our second SRO. It's amazing.
Any plans for more?
I'm
I'm sorry,
No,
my son is
it's-
in elementary, so I need an SRO for elementary. I wish I had one for like,
Every school.
Yeah.
I think that'll be a conversation. So we're now doing, I think once a quarter, we need to get another one scheduled, joint meetings with the school board. So we can talk about those things, which is something hasn't happened in a long time and we've resurrected. And that's a conversation we can't have, but that has been brought up. Do we need, personally, I think we need more. But how do you pay for it? And
Yes.
all those types of things.
Yeah, but definitely praise to the current school board and particularly the new superintendent, because without him being in place, like none of these things would have been happening. We've just been stonewalled for years, so. But it's been a great, huge opportunity to increase that collaboration and say for us to school is another thing I think we're meeting on this month, so. It's sort of exciting.
Resolution, yeah.
Yeah,
There you go.
the Safe Route School is an amazing program where if we just talk to each other and cooperate, we can get money from the state to fix sidewalks, do that kind of thing.
There were cycles in the past where the state money got unused. I mean, it was just sitting there and we could have gotten it if we would have had collaboration. We just couldn't get it.
Isn't the newest SRO though part-time middle school and elementary school? Yeah, so it does fit sometime at the elementary schools.
Yeah, I think both SROs are gonna be spending some time at the elementary schools, so.
Yeah, the announcement said that one was high school, one was middle school, but they both will be
Rotating.
yeah.
But to your point,
One for elementary.
yes, I totally am in agreement with you there.
Thanks.
Would support that.
I just wanted to point out that they are spending some time there.
And I've seen them in the morning when I go drop off my son. I do
Yeah.
see the cars going back, but I want.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, just looking to the future of public safety, you know, we have some real challenges in our region, as most of us know. There's a term floating around called the Portland creep. You know, we're starting to see some of the stuff that typically has been in Portland is now coming out into our communities. We have a jail system that is understaffed. They just had to close their wing because of staffing,
County cut their funding.
because the county's cutting funding. And because of that, we're getting directions from the DA office on, we can't take as many arrests to jail because of that, just because of staffing issues. So this is an area that we've got to pay a lot of attention to as we move forward. So there's gonna be more to come on that. So. Anything else on public safety?
I got a couple questions.
Yeah.
One that's written here, the action plan with to improve safety on county-owned roads, is that Elward? Is that,
And
that is, and didn't we submit or apply for some money? Did we
Well,
ever?
we've submitted for consideration from ODOT and Washington County to lower the speed limits. It is a arduous process, bureaucratic to the extreme. We were notified that both have been approved to be lowered, so both EDNO will be down to 35 miles per hour going forward. So hopefully we'll have work being done soon to lower those speed limits. But we started that process in February of 2022, and it was sometime in July of this year when we finally got through that
18
entire
months.
process.
And just kudos to the city and actually the county in this case, because the city and the county, in the wake of that horrible accident, we had all of our work
Which
done.
wasn't because of speed.
It wasn't, but it raised
yeah.
awareness and. Because of that, you know, the city and the county, we had all our work done and everything submitted within a couple months, including traffic studies and the whole 9 yards and. A year later, ODOT got around to it and we had a lot of conversations with ODOT. You have to get quicker at this.
So
So
they have like one person does reviews those requests statewide or something ridiculous like that.
it's.
The other question I just had, and I don't know if it's really public safety or infrastructure, I would say it's both, the Oregon Street improvements, where does that fall on here? Or is that still underway? You know, we had the concept plan for the sidewalks running from the fire station to the traffic circle.
Yeah,
and-
engineering still being finished, and then it's just a matter of the timing for when to pull the trigger.
Love to see that
Yeah.
in place at some point too, just, you know, when you talk about sidewalk improvements and. Yeah, you all heard that.
Well, and it's like, it's a project that's jointly coupled with the stormwater facility too, so it makes it a little longer and complex, but. We have not deprioritized.
Not at all.
I thought we said when Sean left council, we struck it off the list.
That's right. Yeah, just leave that ground. Not true.
Just kidding.
A couple thoughts on this one.
Yeah.
Traffic Safety Committee, so this is like my category.
Yep.
The Safe Routes to School program, we've talked about that a lot with our group, and excited to see the city kind of pursuing that. I was a little disappointed to hear that the city was only, at the time it was first come up, that the council was only interested in pursuing it if there was a financial contribution from the school district. Is that still a thing, or?
I don't think that was ever.
Okay, and by the way,
We literally cannot engage in the program without the cooperation of the school district.
We were funding, trust me, 5 years ago, we were funding.
100%.
everything. The money was like free. And it's like, just put your name on a piece of paper. That was
We did all the work and all the money.
Is that still contingent on that strip of sidewalk going up to the middle school? Is that, wasn't that the big hang up for a while there on the curve? from-
Which they didn't want the.
Well, there's,
Yeah.
There was some work that needed to happen.
yeah, and there's some more detail around that too, and because of bus routes and all kinds of stuff. This is where we have to collaborate with school.
But it was never contingent on the, we've never asked.
Okay, that's just misunderstanding there.
The whole goal is
There was a-
just to collaborate so we can get the free money.
Yeah, it's a federal grant.
I'm a big proponent. I think it's an amazing program that we're.
Yeah.
The
Definitely.
frustration on this side of.
It's pretty obvious.
It just didn't make sense. It just
Free
didn't
money.
make sense.
I had some rather interesting conversations with the former school board chair. I'll just put it that way.
Okay, well, we don't have to go down that.
Well, I'll say this, Dr. Lyon has been really supportive. It's on the agenda tonight for our portion of the resolution to get this kicked off.
There's nothing better than other people's money.
Got that right.
When it comes to local government, let's get the state money, let's get the county money, let's get the federal money.
Sherwood sends out far more money than we get back, you know, so we're always looking for ways to.
And you don't want
money back.
long-term strings attached to it, but that money, but the money that these.
This is some more.
You know, and back to, just real quick on that, you know, back to infrastructure. Not only are we looking to get money from the state, but we work really hard with our federal team in DC and make multiple trips out there lobbying for earmarks. We did get an earmark for 3 million, I think it is, to help build a road in the Tonquin employment area. So that'll help open up that land for development. And Congresswoman Salinas has been awesome to work with, and we have a broadband earmark that's in the ag bill right now, if we can just get Congress to pass the budget.
It's one of those bills that usually gets passed.
Yeah, and then and Wyden's team has been working with us on some grants to upgrade our 70-year-old sewer infrastructure in the downtown area. So we'll take it anywhere we can get it. So, yeah.
Yeah, so
Oh, yeah.
the majority of the things that we deal with that people bring to us has to do with like the sidewalk pedestrian safety around that I think the Safe Routes to School program will be able to support, which is great. And then that you have the other one on there for infill sidewalk and ADA improvements. Occasionally we get ADA improvement requests that are not really traffic safety, but ADA, and I'm glad to hear that the city's doing a ADA transition plan and gonna prioritize that, but those should be kind of a no-brainer. Whenever someone specifically says there's an accessibility issue, we should be, funding those improvements, without question, in my opinion. But, so I'm glad to see those things on the list.
And something, a lot of, there's the bucket of ADA stuff that we're doing that is a priority. Craig knows more than I about how much it's longer till we're done with all those sidewalk ramps with the yellow. So
We have quite a few sidewalk ramps still to do, and they'll come out with this ADA transition plan, but we have been doing sidewalks, ramps for probably the last 10 years. We just didn't have a.
So making, and the state is now, we were doing it ahead of time, now the state's saying, hey, you need to do it, all over, and so other cities are like us doing it, so that's. part of what we're doing with accessibility.
So Craig, is it possible for the work that the traffic safety committee is doing to inform that plan in terms of priorities? Okay, great.
It's just the one thing in particular that has stood out to me is that when somebody has made a request for an accessibility, an improvement for an ADA ramp or crosswalk or something. There's a plan, like generally, the city is gonna take care of these issues, and this is our prioritization based on your transition plan that you come up with. But when you have somebody that has a disability that brings something to you, like those should rise to the top. Or at least there should be a process involved with hearing what their issue is and, you know, finding where it fits, if it does rise to the top or is it in a plan, you know, that sort of thing.
Like reassess the priorities based on.
Yeah, and I don't think that there has been that piece of it where people would bring things to us. And we've only been around for 2 or 3 years, so it hasn't been like a long-term thing, but someone would bring something to us. It's like, this really isn't a traffic safety issue. This is more of an accessibility issue.
Kind of similar to where on Shore Boulevard, where the lady who's blind.
Oh, I just thinking about that.
We put the sign, yeah, Jan, put the signs up so that it warns people that there's a blind person who crosses at this crosswalk, please. Be uber careful, you know, even more careful, you know, so.
Yeah, so I guess just prioritizing, like, having a process to hear people so that the people that, you know, are gonna benefit from those facilities, you know, that they're being heard, and we're not just following a plan, not blindly, but following a plan.
Plans can
Just,
change.
yeah, regardless of where the need is.
I shouldn't speak out of turn. Plans can change.
We've had requests for ADA ramps. It's come to public works. We prioritize them until we did this ADA. We've installed those requests by the traffic safety committee, by the church. They're off of Mining Key, moving in, put a crosswalk in there, I believe, and installed. So there has been some stuff done over the years.
Nice.
Probably never even has gone to the traffic.
Right.
safety, Because it's really not.
It's not a traffic, yeah.
And they've done stuff even like, you know, if there's a dark spot, a dark corner. You know, they call it a traffic light or
Street lights.
street light, you know, situation, they've done. lots of
So
street lights.
what I'm hearing though is that the leader of the committee here doesn't know that there's a, you know, if there's a process or a form where he can say, Craig, here's one that should be prioritized in the top, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
I don't know.
Or do you know, like, if I came to you and said, I need a ramp by my house, do you know what to do with it?
Typically, when they've come up, the conversation leads to city staff. This is important, prioritize. It's not a traffic safety issue. This is a
Okay.
city accessibility issue.
Okay, so
that's kinda how
the
they-
person then knows to get a hold of him.
I don't know. Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
I think
oh,
that's how
perfect.
it's happened in
Okay.
the past, but
So I think another, and we've had some conversations about this, because we actually budget about $100,000 a year for the traffic safety committee. And I think there's some squishiness about what exactly that's for. And we've been having some internal conversations because I think you guys need to know exactly what that's for and what it can be.
there's a lot
used
of
for.
questions about that.
Yes, and I think we owe it to the committee to really nail that down and how that works. So, yeah.
From a planning commission side, it has been amazing to have a traffic safety committee because we have residents coming to us after a development is built that says there's a problem and we go, we deal with planning, we don't deal with traffic issues. And so
So you passed the hot potato then?
we, as a planning commission, for years kept asking, what's the process? What's the process? What's the process? And to me, we've made steps forward to just have a process, have a committee, have a place where a citizen can be heard. And I went to one of the police meetings and heard the traffic safety committee at work, and it's like, yes, there's a process. May not be perfect yet, but at least there's a place where citizens can go, and I'm very thankful for that. So thank you.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we're still learning and trying to figure out where our place is and what we do, but yeah.
How we all are. I've been on council 7 years. I'm so.
So I want to make sure we have some good
Yeah.
time for some conversation about next steps and process. So let's jump into fiscal responsibility. I will say as a general rule of thumb, again, feel free to pipe in. The council, You're the only one I can see, please. Over there. Anyways, as a general rule of thumb, I wasn't singling you. Hi. You know, we.
Feel free to talk at any time, Doug. I know you're shy, so.
We're typically in our budgeting process, and you know this, you know, we're as a budget committee, pretty fiscally conservative. You know, this last cycle and talking to my peers, other mayors in Washington County, they were all fighting budget deficits. Bill, you know, Beaverton had a $10 million deficit they were trying to fill.
Yeah, well, they raised their taxes a lot.
Yeah, so we're, because we have been fiscally responsive, we look at that 5-year forecast and we make sure that the decisions we're making, we're not going to be paying for in a bad way in 5 years. We were in a good spot this year. You know, we didn't have to fill a budget hole. We were able to fund things. So that is a general rule of thumb. That's kind of how we operate. Do you want anything you want to add on that?
No, I think the committee and the council, of course, they do a really good job being prudent and thinking about everything about the effects of decisions that they're looking at. And I think they do a really good job with the forecast. David, of course, does a really great job with the presentation. And it's just really, it's good to see that everybody's kind of looking to the future to make sure that there's not going to be some sort of windfall where you have to start making cuts, because nobody wants that. And nobody wants cuts in services and all of that, right?
Right. And so yeah, this group, the budget committee, you, the team here does a great job on all that. And I've already talked about some of the other things in here. We're always pursuing other people's money, as the council president just put it. That's how we get things done. And I will add just a kudos for staff too. They do an outstanding job of looking, because we have piles of money in like our water fund and stuff like that. Not that it's just sitting there. It has a purpose. It's to manage infrastructure as we go forward and do upgrades, but that can be invested. And that team does a really good job of investing it wisely and getting and squeezing every extra penny out of it. When we did the urban renewal agency, because interest rates were so low, we went out and bonded against that urban renewal agency. And then we were able to reinvest that money, and we're earning more on interest on the investments than we're paying in interest on the bond. So they do some really smart things to help us out. Any questions on that?
Can I ask one thing on the SWAT that we had? Because I don't quite remember the reason. The charter restrictions on revenue increases are limited to 2%.
Oh, yeah.
That's our
lovely thing
I
that
don't remember this.
voted on that.
That came in when Bill Middleton.
Yeah, the year we
was mayor.
ran.
Okay,
That was a charter change, and but that's only on residents. It's not on commercial. That 2%
Okay,
cap. But
okay.
that is a limitation.
Gotcha, percent on fees,
Yeah.
2% on, yeah, we're.
So it's connected to water rates. Which,
got it. Okay,
and then you know, we're very transparent in our fees on our bills, so when street safety and street lights are important and sidewalks are important, we said, okay, well, we can't do that without a little bit extra money, so we put fees on there. This is where it's going. We have a small fund for safe rescue, and all those small fees, same limitation, so those.
it's the 2%.
2%.
So if, not saying you want to do this, but if you were to get rid of that, that's a charter amendment that has to go to the voters, correct?
Voters.
And
Got
we are in the process, probably most of you know, of setting up a charter review committee, which we need to do every once in a while, and every 5 or 6 years.
So that could be looked at.
That could be something to look
I
at.
mean, honestly, it needs to be because,
I mean,
as you all know, like inflation
inflation.
and cost of.
Yeah.
Cost of things is way more than 2% growth a year. So-
Yeah, well, if you look at like water materials, wastewater materials are much higher than 2%. So, I mean, that's eventually gonna,
Eventually it's
Gonna catch up.
Funds,
yeah.
Awesome. And then real quickly, the last one is citizen engagement. This is really about improving how we communicate with our citizens. In my opinion, you shouldn't have to always come to a council meeting and give public comment if you have a concern or an issue, or you want to give input into a decision the council's looking at. You know, how do we engage with our community in a way that's compatible with their busy lifestyles? How do we make sure that our services and how we present that to our community, they're easy to use, consistent, We have an RFP we're putting together right now to deal with the website and do the website, which needs some work. Staff and Brad have been doing a great job on. So this one really kind of revolves around that. We also have engaging with youth and setting up I think it was one of these other ones. We're working with the school district right now to set up a youth advisory committee and partnering with the school system on that and working the others, charter school and some of the other ones into that to get more kids engaged.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
speaking of that aside, but I think we need to have a conversation around that. How we want that advisory structure. I'm not sure.
We'll have a session on it. So this is really about citizen engagement, engaging our youth. A couple of years ago, one of the things in here we had was creating the senior advisory committee, which we got accomplished and that isn't in place and running, and doing a great job, so. So just really quickly on the process, I know we kind of interjected, we had a lot of thoughts as we were going along. Kind of some of the things I heard was going in the, I think there's a value, and you brought this up too, Taylor, in having a conversation before we go into goals and objectives. So all of you can kind of come pitch your ideas. We might have ideas for you and kind of come to, you know, a consensus of what that looks like before we get into visioning.
Maybe we have a
Yeah.
work session like this. A month prior.
And I'd like to add Doug's idea as well, that you bring us your top two. It's not a laundry list. It's a top one, top two. You winnow it down because that's still. And things.
It might not still be possible.
Well, things. No, I know. We're not saying yes to all of that, but I don't want to have
We may not
50
have an
things.
idea every year. I mean.
Yeah.
And we,
Yeah.
but I think that collaboration, in your point about each of you being able to hear the entire conversation.
Yeah.
So you can have that context when you go back to report back to your individual committees and individual report.
Top two ideas with cost, right? Or
Yeah, and it can be rough estimates, right? Yeah, we're not expecting you to do all the legwork on that, but if you were to say, hey, we want a new library, a $20 million library, well, okay, that's, you know, let's have some discussions around how to do that, but, you know, I feel like it makes it so that we can really kind of compare apples to oranges when we kind of know a ballpark.
I think ballpark's important, but we really don't, I mean,
Yeah.
the council's going to the goal, set those goals and objectives. The
Yeah.
next step is they go out.
Then they
and
go
produce a
out,
budget.
yeah.
And in the budget cycle, we might go, oh.
We can't do that.
Can't do all of
after
this.
I-
Or there might be, well, we can do more.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
would expect
so-
costs to come.
The
into it.
ballpark will more this is a weird Canadian phrase, but is it a cabbage or a house?
Okay.
Which is this something that's a very small that we feel like would be a very small?
Are you Canadian?
I'm not, I had a Canadian boss that used to always say this to me. He used to always say it and it drove me crazy, but now it's stuck in my head. Is it a cabbage or a house?
I'd still like us to consider that joint, the joint goal session too,
I'm sorry.
doing a joint goal session.
Goal session.
Yeah, I'd still like us to consider that in some shape or form,
I know, what is everybody's
or
thoughts
maybe
on that?
an and all, I mean, a yes and to the pre. And a couple of goals, but to have them there as well, I think there's value there.
I mean, our goal sessions are public, are open to the public.
Nothing.
Anyway, I think if you get too many people,
Having a pitch in advance, that's similar, almost like the SWAT deal that said that's a pitch deal. Of course, my perspective, it's important to hear, all ideas. Well,
I'm just waiting for you to be done. I'm gonna say something next.
hear my ideas and then digest it and then come back, part of the, we'll see.
The way I would envision it is we'd have this pitch session ahead of time. All the pitches would be made. There'd be open conversation among all of the board representatives there, and the board representatives would even say, you know what? I'm on board that one, right? Because all those reasons, they're all gonna just go like, no, I want mine. I mean, they're gonna be like, oh yeah, I heard it. That's the best one. We should do that. And then we get a rank order out of it. We get feedback from them. And then at the goal session, ultimately is where we decide what makes it into goals or not, right? That's kind of the way I'm thinking about it. And they're welcome to come, but I think the goal conversation is really the case.
Does that process work?
So I actually went to the goal session the last time because Renee had mentioned it at the advisory board. And I actually came and just as a citizen, but also I representing the seniors within Sherwood. It was really, really helpful. And it was also really good to go back and let the advisory board members know, hey, the work that we're doing is important and this is what's happening. So.
I think just, I don't know if you're still using the same consultant that is
Mhm.
using
SGI,
SGI, and it's just, I think it might be challenging to have too many people. To plan an agenda for a goal session would be difficult, but I think I like the idea of us pitching ideas to you guys early, so you can represent that, or through our liaisons, for example, have those conversations. Bring those to you in advance. If we want to sit in and perhaps answer some questions about those, we can be subject matter experts to that, but. Formalizing us as part of the goal session seems like that would make things a little unwieldy.
I agree.
Experience.
Okay. Well, it sounds like we have the outline for a plan moving forward, so. We're right at 7 o'clock. Any last quick questions or thoughts?
I'm just happy to see DEIA on here, and I'd like to plant the seed that could probably for your goal session next year be in all of these somewhere.
Like that, part of all of them.
Just throwing that out.
All right. Awesome.
Yeah.
So we are, well, thank you. Thank you.
Oh, God.
Yeah, thank you for being here.
Yeah, my council meeting.